right. And we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to each and every one of you to, I don't yet have a name for this. Let's just call it In Conversation with Leon Claassen. Leon, I'm going to give you the floor to just introduce yourself and very specifically, what is Ratings Africa? When did you start? And what is the goal for Ratings Africa?
Good day, Stefan, and all the viewers. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to you about the municipalities. Ratings Africa is what we call a governance ratings agency. We look at governance aspects of corporates as well as municipalities. I am the managing executive of Ratings Africa. We've started the business in 2011. We were previously involved in credit ratings. But we've moved away from that, looking at governance aspects. And when we look at municipalities, we consider financial sustainability as a key component of governance. And that's why we've developed what we call the Municipal Financial Sustainability Index, where we measure the financial sustainability of municipalities through a scoring model that has been developed over many years of doing business and analyzing municipalities and so forth. And that's basically the background of Ratings Africa.
Okay, I genuinely appreciate that. I think especially when we get to finances, economics, things of that nature, a lot of people's eyes just sort of glaze over. These are things that no one understands and no one really cares. Basically, people just want to hear the economy is screwed, nothing we can do, and then they sort of move on. But reports like yours, and I'm not even a financial guy, and your report was incredibly eye-opening, just and scary when you get to some of the numbers to realize, wait, we're in deep trouble here. But before we get to the actual trouble part of it, maybe just tell us what is your methodology? Like, how do you come up with this report? And specifically, we have about 256 or 8 municipalities in South Africa. You guys decided to focus in on 128. What's the reason for those municipalities specifically? I mean, just the basic methodology.
All right. There are about 257 municipalities, including the metropolitan municipalities, the local municipalities, which are the largest group, and then district municipalities as well. The reason why we've started to look only at more or less the 120 largest local municipalities is that some of the others are getting so small that in terms of banks and other investors, they're not really interested in those very small municipalities. And for us to make commercial sense for us as well, we've decided to look at, let's say, the 120 largest local municipalities, as well as the 8 metros, because obviously they are very important in terms of economic situation for South Africa. As I've mentioned, the methodology that we use has been developed over many years. We've used, I would say, best international credit rating analysis methodology, as well as our experience in the South African municipal market with municipalities to build what we call a data-driven scoring model. The South African municipalities operate slightly different than most of the other international municipalities or local governments. And that's why our model is kind of unique in the world in measuring the different aspects of the financial situation of a municipality. Now, basically what we do is we measure 6 components. And these components are, the first one is the operating performance. That is basically to look at the income and expenditures of the municipality. And see whether they, at the end of the day, realize a surplus or a deficit or a profit or a loss, whatever you want to call it. So that's the first component. The second component is the liquidity. And that is basically to see if a municipality has sufficient cash reserves to fund the operating expenditures of the municipality. The third component that we analyze is what we call the debt governance or the borrowings, to see how much borrowings the municipality has. It's normally a good thing for a municipality to have a moderate level of borrowings because it helps them to accelerate infrastructure development and so forth and service delivery. But obviously, too much borrowings increase the financial risk of the municipality. So that's why we look at the borrowings as well. Then we look at the budget funding of the municipality. How is the municipality funded through its operating and its capital budget? And does it generate sufficient funds to fund the operations as well as capital expenditures of the municipality? The fifth component that we analyze is obviously the affordability, because if the rates and taxes that the municipality charge are too high for the community to afford, then obviously it affects the sustainability. So that's the first component, to look at the affordability of rates and taxes for the community of that municipality. And the last component is the infrastructure development, because municipalities are all about infrastructure. They need infrastructure to be able to provide services, and therefore we look at the spending on infrastructure, but also the maintenance of the existing infrastructure to make sure that they are enabled to deliver services to the community and to the residents. So these are the six components that we analyze. And then we weigh these components slightly different. And then we calculate an overall financial sustainability score out of 100. And we've chosen just to go the route of making it a score out of 100 because I think that is the easiest to recognize and understand by most users of the report, and so on, rather than use the symbols that the credit rating agencies use, like a AAA or a BBB. We've gone down the route to say,
which no one really understands, like the rating scores of the credit agencies. My question would be in terms of, so say for example, a municipality is a 30 out of 100 versus 25 out of 100. How big of a difference should the average Joe read into that sort of delta?
Okay, I think our experience over the last 12, 15 years that we've done this, the Municipal Financial Sustainability Index, is to say that municipalities with a score of, say, below 40 to 35, those are municipalities that are really in deep trouble. The model is designed to have a good spread of scores through all the municipalities. For instance, the highest score for the 2025 analysis, because it's based on the June 2025 financial statements of the municipalities. The highest score was a score of 80 out of 100. And the lowest score, I think, was a score of about 6 out of 100. So we have a good spread of scores throughout the country for the different municipalities, so that that differentiation can be detected and can be understood. And that's why I say, a score of, let's call it 35, indicates municipality that is in financial difficulty and financial stress.
Okay. So it shouldn't really be read as a sort of a delta margin, but rather there's ranges. So if a municipality is above 40, let's say 42, it's on its way to a crisis, but it's also not yet in crisis area. But if it falls below 40, now we're getting to it. And then if it falls below 35, so you will have these sort of brackets that you place municipalities in.
Yes, you're quite right, Stefan. And obviously, over the years, we've seen that the scores that we assign to these municipalities is reflected in, let's say, the physical appearance of those municipalities. Those with consistent low scores, you can go and have a look at those municipalities. They look neglected, they look dilapidated, they're not well maintained. You go drive through the streets, there are many potholes, the grass is
Yeah.
not cut. Then you go to a municipality with scores, let's say above 50 and around 60, and you see a marked difference just in the physical appearance of those municipalities. And that's why I say, over time, I think our index has proven itself as a very reliable indicator of the functionality of a municipality. Those with
Yeah.
persistent low scores, the service delivery is poor. Those with high scores, the service delivery as at a decent level. Obviously, yes, there are always some problems with municipalities, even those with very high scores. They have some areas where, things are not 100%, but in general speaking, there is a big difference between those with high scores and those with low scores. And that is the message that we send out. Those with low scores, it affects the quality of service delivery, and we know, and we've seen that regularly. Municipalities with low scores and very bad service delivery, it has an effect on the economic growth of that local municipality.
Yeah.
And it has an effect on the quality of life of the residents within that municipality. And
Yeah.
that is something that we would like to highlight, to say, if the municipality has the necessary funds to provide services, it will stimulate economic growth within that municipality, and obviously it will improve the quality of life of the residents within that municipality.
I think it makes logical sense, even for someone who isn't economically or numbers minded. I mean, if the streets are falling apart, the electricity is falling apart, service delivery is falling apart, businesses will just naturally opt not to open there
Sure,
because every single service that the state doesn't offer, the business has to figure out how to offer that service
sure.
because it needs it to survive. And so, yeah, it makes sense that as it deteriorates, businesses leave. That puts stress on the local economy, which I think creates a bit of a circle, like a doom circle almost, because as the local economy starts to wane, rates and taxes start to wane, which means less money to actually provide the services that is required. Less services means so we'll get into this sort of spiral that we seem to be falling into. Um, the chart that I have on the screen right now is part of your report, and it shows the last 4 years in South Africa in terms of provinces and the provincial scores that these provinces have gotten.
Yeah,
There's one province that stands out, two really, Free State and Northwest.
sure.
What is going on there? Like, what happens? Uh, what is that?
Well, that is the average scores for the municipalities in the Free State that we've analyzed, and for the Northwest.
Mhm.
And as you can see, the scores are declining. Free State from a 20, which is already very low, to an average score of only 17. Likewise with Northwest. Um, it comes basically back to how these municipalities are managed. It's all about management. If the management is good, if there's good financial policies, and the municipalities adhere to those policies and apply strict financial discipline, the financial situation will be much stronger.
Mm.
But unfortunately, in these two provinces, they don't have proper financial management practices within the majority of the municipalities, and therefore they've achieved these very low scores.
And we can see if you look at all of the provinces in South Africa, except for that very last one, the Western Cape province, they're all declining, like at
Yeah,
various levels and at various rates. I mean, KwaZulu-Natal had a massive drop off from 41 all the way to 33.
yeah.
Limpopo from 41 to 37, so it seems to at least be a bit slower than the rest of the country. What is the difference between the Western Cape and everyone else? Why is because you mentioned to me before we started, you have an open call to all municipalities that you are willing to work with them, uh, what's happening in the other municipalities? That the Western Cape seems to be the only one that's doing better year on year.
Yeah. Stephen, as I mentioned, it comes back to basically management practices. Because a municipality is basically a business. Because when you look at the kind of services that the municipality provides, and they actually call it commercial services, the selling of electricity, selling of water, refuse removal, and sewer. They charge for those services because it's a service that they render. And yes, then they also do have property taxes, but the municipality is basically a business. And if it's not run as a business and make a profit at the end of the day, if they continue to realize losses on the operational side, they're losing money. And if they lose money, they cannot provide proper services. And that's the big difference between, I think, the Western Cape municipalities and the rest of the country, is that they are, in general speaking, in terms of the financial management practices and policies, they are well above the rest of the country. And therefore, most of them, you can have a look at those numbers, they do realize a surplus or a profit at the end of the year, which provides the funds to pay for all the expenditures, the operating expenditures, and also the surplus that they realize is money that they have available to invest in infrastructure. Because obviously the populations are growing, demands change, and residents need infrastructure to be able to develop businesses and things like that. So if a municipality does not realize a surplus at the end of the year, they do not have that funds to invest in new infrastructure. Yes, the municipalities do get capital grants from National Treasury, but that's normally not sufficient. So they do need their own money to be able to invest in infrastructure, to grow the municipality and improve and enhance the service delivery. And when you look at the Western Cape, that's the big difference between the Western Cape and the rest of the country, is in terms of how they manage the financial affairs of those municipalities.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're necessarily the right person to ask about this, but since you guys collect all of the finances for all of the municipalities, we now have Johannesburg with an unfunded budget. So they won't be able to, I'm assuming that means that their budget is larger than what they can collect in rates and taxes, what they're going to get from Treasury, meaning it's a useless budget. Effectively, you have a budget that is more than what you're earning.
Yeah.
How many municipalities in South Africa are in the same space effectively?
Okay, I think, I always say it all starts with the budget of a municipality, the operating budget of a municipality, and then they also have a capital budget. Municipalities are basically not allowed to budget for a deficit. They should budget for at least a break-even situation or making a surplus or a profit. Now, that's why I say everything starts basically with a budget, because they work according to the budget. So if they prepare a proper budget, that indicates that at the end of the day, they will realize a surplus, or at least at the break-even situation. It means the budget is funded. When we look at Johannesburg specifically, in terms of the 2025 financial year, they've realized an operating deficit of 2.8 billion rand. It's slightly better than the previous year. In 2024, I think the operating deficit was 4.4 billion. So it improved a little bit, but a deficit of 2.8 billion rand is still a very, very large number. Now, how do they get to that? The problem is, I'm not sure exactly what the budget was. I haven't looked at the budget, but they should have been preparing a funded budget where they at least have a break-even budget or a slight surplus. But unfortunately, with many of these municipalities, they have political interference, they have projects that are not included in the budget. So that's why most of these municipalities have quite large amounts of funds, irregular spending that was not included into the budget, but they spend that money, and if they do not cut back on other expenditures within the budget, they will overrun the budget and they will make these losses. So that is where it has to start. It starts with the budget. I always say the budget of a municipality is like the rudder of a ship. It steers the municipality in the right direction. So if they prepare a proper budget and they apply sound financial principles and discipline to stay within that budget, they should not be in this very, very difficult situation. Yes, we know there are pressures on the municipalities with migration of people and things like that. And unfortunately, the local economy or the South African economy hasn't been growing as it should have grown over the last decade. And that affects let's say, the financial position of most of the people within South Africa. So it also makes it more difficult for municipalities to increase their rates and taxes and tariffs because they know it will not be affordable. But within that problems that they have, still we see a large majority of the Western Cape municipalities are able to handle that and manage that in a proper way so that they do have surpluses and they do have the ability to provide proper services to their residents. So I think that is the situation with most of the municipalities in South Africa.
I think one of the things you highlight in the report as well is outside of the Western Cape, not a single one of South Africa's municipalities have any cash on hand or leeway for any crisis. If something were to go wrong, there's no money. Like there's that have to go borrow that money. My question is, do we know what the total debt of South Africa's municipalities actually is? And is there money that isn't declared? So can municipalities go, sort of make debt that they don't have to declare to the Treasury or to the Auditor General? Basically, how big is the debt problem of the municipalities of South Africa?
Stefan, yes, if I can just go back maybe one step.
Yeah, of course.
Right in the beginning, I think, of our report, we set out our definition of financial sustainability. Mm-hmm. And the one part of the financial sustainability definition is to say that the municipality should have the necessary reserves to absorb financial shocks that are caused by natural, political, economic, and other disasters. And as we've seen in the Western Cape over the last month and a half, where they had the severe flooding and so forth, that's a natural disaster. And if a municipality does not have the necessary cash reserves to absorb that shock, they're in big trouble. Now, obviously, yes, they are going to, because it's declared a disaster, so they will get money. But obviously, they had to fix quite a number of problems immediately, like electricity and reinstall water services and things like that. And if they do not have enough cash to do that, obviously that will be a catastrophe for those municipalities. So yes, it is necessary for a municipality to have cash reserves to absorb these things, but also just to cover their normal monthly expenditures. What we've done is, and obviously we haven't covered all 130 or whatever, or 200 or close to 200 local municipalities in South Africa. We've only looked at the 120 largest local municipalities. Now, what has happened over the last couple of years, because these municipalities have realized operating losses, those losses accumulate in the liquidity position.
Okay.
And over the last 4 years, the liquidity position has deteriorated to an alarming situation in 2025. In, I think, 2021, the combined liquidity shortfall of these 128 municipalities was only 55 billion rand. That has jumped by about 20 billion rand every year over the last 4 years to 120 million, 127 or 28 billion rand in 2025. Now that is an alarming situation. And the problem with this is how much longer can this continue before the municipalities really start to break down? Because if they do not have the cash, because they realize operating deficits, it accumulates in the liquidity situation, how much longer can they continue to provide a little bit of services? And the problem that we see in terms of this situation is if they do not have cash, obviously they don't pay Eskom. But if they do not have cash, they cannot provide other service providers that provide services to the municipality. If they don't pay those service providers, they will stop providing services to the municipality, and services will start to break down completely. And that is the crisis that we face. If services are really starting to break down on a large scale, the majority of residents are going to withhold their rates and taxes. They're not going to pay because they don't get any services.
Yeah.
And then we will see municipalities starting to collapse. And that is the crisis that I think South Africa is facing at the moment. It will have dire consequences for the economy of this country, the people of this country, and it will have major socioeconomic implications for South Africa as a whole. Because
Just
if it
to get
starts
a
with one municipality, it will just sort of go over to more and more municipalities, and that's the danger of this particular situation that we see.
Yeah. Just to get a quick sense here, what percentage of the income of a municipality is rates and taxes versus the cut that they get from the government, right? Because obviously the government gives them a budget allocation every single year. But what percentage is rates and taxes? On average, obviously, I'm not going to hold you to this number and say, Leon said this is the number and this is forever the number. Just an average ballpark number.
Okay, I think, when you look at the income statement of a municipality, you will see they have basically 5 revenue sources. The 4 commercial revenue streams: the sale of electricity, sale of water, refuse removal, sewer. Those are the 4 main income sources. And then they have property taxes that they receive. And then obviously they have operating grants that they receive from National Treasury. I would say probably about 30% is from rates and taxes. Because when you look at the income statement, you will see a large number in terms of just total revenue. Electricity is normally the largest number on the income statement. But then you must remember, of that number that they get, they have to pay Eskom for the electricity that they use. And so most of the municipalities still realize a profit on the sale of electricity, and that profit can range maybe from about 20-25%, as low as maybe 5 or 6%. So they do realize a small profit or a fair profit from the sale of electricity. So I would say probably about 30% from rates and taxes.
Okay, so the citizens of the city pay about 30% of the total budget, which is scary if you think this number that is on the screen right now, the liquidity shortfall, is obviously also, it has a little bit of a cumulative effect, because every year that you're not doing infrastructure development, or at least maintenance on the infrastructure, every year that you fall behind on Johannesburg has how many years now of water maintenance backlog that
Yeah.
they just can't. So they're not even just maintaining the water infrastructure; they're trying to catch up on what is there. And every year this falls behind, it gets more and more expensive to maintain. It gets more and more expensive. So you could, is there a chance that that number can go in 1 year from say 200 billion to just a trillion, because everything just sort of stops all at once and you just have this complete collapse of the system? Or do you think it will remain a slow, steady collapse?
It's difficult to predict the future.
Mm,
As we've seen there on the graph, over the last 4 years, it has increased by a little bit more than 20 billion every year.
yeah.
And my feeling is that if the municipalities continue on the trajectory that they are at the moment, this will continue, but it will start to accelerate, because they will continue to make operating deficits, and those operating deficits accumulate into the liquidity shortfall that they have.
Yeah.
So what I see is that there might be an acceleration of the liquidity shortfall, and as I've said, that is the alarming situation, because at some point things are going to start to collapse, because it cannot continue indefinitely. It has to reach a point where municipalities say, okay, we don't get money from our residents anymore because they're not willing to pay for services that we do not deliver. Because a lot of businesses already have to look and do certain things and functions just to survive, that were supposed to be provided by the municipalities themselves. And if those businesses say, well, I'm not going to pay the municipality, I'm just going to use that money to fund my own operations, then we have a problem. And if residents start doing that same kind of thing, we are really in deep trouble in South Africa. So yes, just to answer your question, I think it will continue, but it will accelerate up to a point where it collapses.
Okay. And as I alluded to earlier, in your report, you do say that you are I want to say, non-political actor, insofar as you're not part of a specific party, you don't, have a specific bend. You offer to work with all municipalities in the country, and from the report itself, it appears as only the Western Cape ever took you up on the offer to actually work with you and fix their own financial situation and their budgets. Why? Why will none of the other municipalities, seeing the problems that we are in, why are they not taking you up on the offer to say, hey, help us figure this out?
Yeah. It's a difficult question. I'm going to try to answer you properly on this one. When we started this service in the beginning, there were a couple of municipalities that contacted us and said, please give us, because on each municipality we publish a 2-page report which gives the background of the analysis and things like that, and the scores for each component and so forth. There were a few municipalities that contacted us and say, what is our score? And then when we discussed that and provide them the information, they came back to us to say, how can you help us to improve this? Because they want to become financially stronger to provide better services. And that's why over the years, we've been able to provide this additional service to most of the Western Cape municipalities. Most of them have taken it up on that. And that has contributed to the improvement in their financial sustainability scores over the last couple of years. But for us, it's not only about the score. The score is a reflection of what's happening on the ground. Those municipalities that have improved their scores have been able to improve investment in infrastructure, provided better services, and so forth. There was one municipality, and I'm not going to mention the name, that was very, very low. And they were actually very furious with us. they received a score of 23 out of 100,
Oh.
which is very low.
Mm.
And then we had a discussion with them, but they remained very upset with us and say, but yeah, we don't treat them fairly and so on. We said, we measure each of these municipalities on exactly the same manner. There's no favoritism or anything for any municipality. And that particular municipal manager, after about 2 months, he called me. He said to me, Leon, the penny has dropped now. I understand we are in deep financial trouble. How can you help us? And we started working with them, give them guidance to say, here are some of your problems. We are not consultants, but they've taken that into their policies and the management practices and so forth. And over a period of about 4 years, they've improved their score of 23 to a score of 59. But along with that, they've been able to improve infrastructure development, service delivery, and they've actually improved their cash situation as well. So those municipalities that were willing to work with us and receive guidance from us on how to improve the situation have benefited from it. Unfortunately, we've reached out to many other municipalities throughout the country. I'm not exactly sure what are the reasons. I know some municipalities say when they hear the word rating agency, they don't want to deal with us because they think we're going to come with a big stick to hit them. But that's not the case. As I mentioned, right, maybe in the beginning, when we set out Ratings Africa, the objective and the goal was to say, let us help municipalities and guide them to become financially stronger so that they can provide better services. Some of those municipalities, and not all of them are in the Western Cape, there are some outside of the Western Cape that have reached out to us and say, okay, guys, how can you help us? And we've guided them, and they've been able to provide decent services throughout. And that is the objective. Why many of the other municipalities don't want to, because we've reached out to a number of them. I cannot give you the answer why.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think they don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to see that there is a different way of doing things, and they don't want to change. I think some of the people that we've spoken to are probably scared that we're going to detect some corruption or something like that, and therefore they don't want us close to them. But that's not the case. We're not forensic accountants that are going to look for corruption and things like that. We look at the big picture and say, these are your big areas of problems, but you can fix it yourself. And that was what most of the municipalities in the Western Cape have done. They fixed their problems by themselves, and being able to improve the situation.
I think for me at least, and I'm not speaking on behalf of Ratings Africa, yeah. For me, if you know that you have a financial problem and someone reaches out and says, hey, I want to help you fix it, and you go, no, thanks, I'm good, then that problem is a feature, not a bug, The problem, if the problem were to go away, that would be a much bigger problem for you. Which I think most South Africans know. The corruption and the levels of corruption in these municipalities in South Africa is absolutely off the charts. I do want to focus, just lastly, I mean, if there's anything else that you think we should be talking about, you'll be welcome to do that. But I want to focus on the large metropolitan cities of South Africa. So this would be Pretoria, Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, and do we include Bloemfontein as a large metropolitan city, or?
Well, it's classified as a metro, yes.
All right, so let's include Bloemfontein. I think Polokwane is also one, but I'm from Polokwane originally, so I'm not going to include that. Let's just focus on I think the big three, actually big four. So Pretoria, Johannesburg, Durban, and Cape Town. Where are these four cities in terms of their ratings?
Okay. if you see on that graph there, the bottom line there is the average scores for the municipalities, which has also declined from 42 to 40. Yes, Cape Town is head and shoulders above all the other metropolitan municipalities in South Africa. I think their score for 2025 was about 70 out of 100, whereas the rest was below 40. Except Nelson Mandela Bay, they're probably in the 40s, 47 or 48, I think. But the rest are all below a score of 40. That includes Pretoria or Tshwane and eThekwini, which is Durban, as well as Ekurhuleni, which is the other big metro. Their scores are all below 40 out of 100.
So effectively what you're saying is the economic centers of our country are all in crisis territory except for Cape Town.
Yes, I would say that, yeah.
Or at least with Nelson Mandela Bay, it's sort of teetering between crisis and normality.
It's on the brink, yeah. It's on the brink, yes. Yeah. But the rest of the municipalities are, or the metros, in my view, are basically also, in a situation where if they don't turn it around, it is going to develop in a full-blown crisis for most of them.
But Leon, what you're saying, what scares me about that is not only is it not sustainable for the people who live in these metros, but if we just zoom out a little bit and we look economically, business-wise, Cape Town, like already we see migration to the Western Cape is massive. I believe every single year it's increasing. Last year it was something like 128,000 people who emigrated to Cape Town alone, not just the Western Cape more broadly. But what happens if places like Joburg stop functioning? And now you also have all of these big businesses moving to the Western Cape, moving to Cape Town. Cape Town doesn't have the infrastructure to carry all of this. So if that were to happen, even Cape Town would cease to operate and function. What do we do? What does it look like when a municipality goes into complete collapse? And can it be turned around once it enters collapse? Because I think, if I understand you correctly, most of our big municipalities in South Africa are on the way to total dysfunction, but they have not yet reached that point.
Yeah.
When they reach that point, yes?
Yeah, Stefan, you're right. I think that they're on their way to becoming dysfunctional if they continue on this path. It will have a catastrophic effect on the economy and the people of South Africa if these big metros are really starting to fall over and cannot provide any services or just a limited amount of services. And that is the danger, and that's why we are actually have been sending this message out to say, guys, we are heading for a problem. We have to turn it around. But it seems to me that that message has not been reached by the metros itself or the government, because we are now seeing the big problems. And I think Joburg has been at the forefront of highlighting the crisis that is in the process of developing at the moment. If that would happen and we have a migration of people, and not only from the metros, if other municipalities, local municipalities start to collapse, we are going to see a migration of businesses and people to the metros, because that's where they're going to migrate. They're not going to migrate to small municipalities. They're going to migrate to the big cities. And that will just accelerate the collapse of the big cities as well. And that is the concern that we are facing at the moment. If there's a total collapse, it's going to have major economic and socio-economic implications for the whole of South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking just infrastructure wise, you need to be able to plan a decade, 2 decades in advance,
Sure.
right? So that you know this is how many roads we're going to need. This is how many water pipes. If you suddenly in 1 year have a million extra people in your city, that's a disaster, especially in cities that's already in backlog, right?
Yeah.
So, ah, Leon, that's very scary. Is there anything in your report that you still want the people to know about that we haven't covered yet?
I've just seen a question here, and that was what is the average salary portion of the expenditures? Um,
Hmm.
the way that we measure the cost of salaries is we look at the total expenditures of the municipalities, but we exclude the bulk purchase cost. And then we calculate what is the salary as a percentage of that. Um, and that varies between about 40 to 45%
Whoa,
of
whoa.
expenditures, which is quite high. It should be lower than that. But that is a portion of the total expenditures that goes toward salaries. And but when we look at total staff costs, so it's salaries as well as the payments to councillors. So
But I
that's
mean,
between 40 and 45%.
if you're talking, because you said at the beginning of this, a municipality is effectively a business. It has to operate at a profit margin. But obviously, we're not talking 100% profits, but it needs to have a healthy
Sure.
profit margin to have cash on hand for
Yeah.
chaos. If a business had 40% of its total earnings in salaries, that business would be broke. Like that would be a catastrophe of mismanagement. In fact, Pick and Pay is currently going, and I'm not going to tie you to Pick and Pay. I know that's what you guys do, but I was watching this podcast with Biz News, where the new CEO of Pick and Pay was talking about the incredible wage bill. Pick and Pay just kept hiring more and more people, and as a result of this, the company is under severe strain with all of its salaries. And I don't believe salaries is near 40% of their total earnings. Like that in itself is a nightmare.
Yeah. Now, ideally that number, because a municipality is also service delivery. So services businesses normally have a higher percentage of salary cost than, for instance, a manufacturing business. Ideally, I would like to see that salary cost at about 35% of expenditures. That should be a kind of ideal. Unfortunately, with collective bargaining in South Africa, that has pushed up salary costs tremendously over the last decade or 20 years or whatever in South Africa. It has affected the financial sustainability of municipalities in South Africa,
Yeah.
because the salary cost is, my view, too high for the revenue. And as I've mentioned, because the slow growing national economy that we have just increases the pressure on the municipalities to be able to operate very efficiently as well, in terms of generating sufficient money to be able to provide proper services. So it's a combination of a number of things. But yes, I think salary cost is one of those items that, and it can run away very quickly with the municipality if they don't manage that in a very, very proper way. And yes, municipalities should be innovative in looking at making themselves more efficient in terms of the services that they deliver, so that they do not rely on labor costs, and maybe more on technology and so forth to reduce the cost of providing services to the communities.
But of course, we can't do that because, as you mentioned, collective bargaining unions make it almost you can't fire people in South
Yeah,
Africa. You constantly have to increase their salaries. And it's like these unions don't seem to understand that if this continues, soon all of the hundreds of thousands of workers of the municipalities might have a job in theory, but in practice, that job isn't paying anything.
yeah,
But apparently in South Africa, we just sleepwalk from one crisis to the next, especially when companies like yours warn ahead of time, right? And say, hey, guys, maybe turn it around. It's not as if it's unfixable. Uh, Leon, I truly appreciate you coming here and sharing this with us. I will be honest, I'm a little bit more depressed than when we started because I mean, I'm South African, so I understand that we have economic problems. But then you see 155 billion liquidity losses in 4 years, which means in 5 years it's going to have tripled
Yeah,
because next year is probably going to be 150 billion, if not more.
sure.
Is there anything you can tell us that is maybe good news? Like some kind of good news.
Well, I think, when we look at the Western Cape municipalities, obviously they're not perfect. There are some problems with those municipalities as well. Some of them are also having low scores and so on. But generally speaking, when we look at the Western Cape, they still provide decent services. Yes, they're also under pressure, but I think the Western Cape sort of provides a blueprint to say municipalities can be sustainable in South Africa. They can still provide a decent level of services. Yes, I would like to see probably an increase in the operational grants that they receive from government to cover the cost of providing free services to the indigent and so forth. That will help those municipalities tremendously. But if the rest of the country can follow the Western Cape's example and say, guys, let's go and sit with you and have a look at how you do things, it can be turned around. As I've mentioned to you, there was one municipality that had a very low score. They've been able to turn it around. There were others as well. So, yes, although the average score for the municipalities outside of the Western Cape is only 27, there's still something that alive within those municipalities. But it's going to need, let's say, right down from councillors that will be accountable to say we are going to do the right things. It will mean that the management of those municipalities get back to basics. No fancy projects and things like that. Get back to basics. Make sure that you budget properly, because I said the budget is the rudder that steers the municipality in the right direction. Cut back all those unnecessary expenditures, focus on the basics, get the basics right. I think there is still hope, but it's going to take a collective effort from everyone at the municipal level to fix that problem and get out of the situation. And what we've seen with some of these municipalities that have been in a very difficult situation, when they start taking ownership of that and say we are going to fix it, and they implement the right policies and they apply the right financial discipline, and they see things starting to turn around, there's like, wow, okay, we have achieved something. They take ownership of that situation, and things start to improve. And when the municipalities start to improve, you will see automatically economic growth start to take place within those municipalities, because businesses will say, okay, it looks good, yeah, let's invest, let's improve. And obviously that is a slow process, but it can be achieved. It's not going to be overnight or 2 years or 3 years. It's probably going to be a 4 or 5 year period. But it can be turned around.
Yeah.
And my advice would be for most of the municipalities, go to the Western Cape, because I know most of the Western Cape municipalities are willing to talk to other municipalities and say, this is what we do. Come have a look and apply and replicate what we do at your municipality, and you will be able to turn it around and make it a successful municipality and provide proper services. So although the pictures or the numbers paint a very bleak picture, and I think we're all very concerned when we look at that, I think there is still hope, but then we need political will, we need the right management, and make sure that they just do the basic things right. It's not rocket science, it's pure basic financial management that will turn this situation around.
Leon, thank you so much for giving your time to talk to us and to make these numbers available, and for all the work that you and the incredible people at Ratings Africa do. We truly appreciate it. I know it's thankless work most of the time, but then again, that's what most work is all about. So thank you so much. Um, is there any last things that you would like to say, or do you feel we've covered all of the most important?
Stefan, I think we've covered most of the stuff. Yes, I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and to your viewers. Yes, let's. I think we should all take hands um,
Mm.
and make this country better because we can. Um, and just forget all the differences that we have, but look at the situation as it is, and fix it. Because I always say, a pothole does not have a political party. A pothole has to be fixed. So we have to look beyond that and say, let us fix this stuff because it can be done.
Yeah. Leon, thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm going to continue the stream on this side, but I truly appreciate you spending your time with us and giving us these numbers and facts.
No, thank you very much, Stefan. Appreciate that. Have a nice
Thank you,
weekend.
Leon. The same to you. Bye bye.
Okay, bye bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's insane. Um, when I saw that report, so Leon emailed me 2 days ago with the report, and as soon as I started reading the report, I emailed him back and I was like, "Wait, can I talk to you? Is there any way for you to come on the show? Because I do believe these are things that people need to know about." I think um, I know that very often when we talk economics, most people get bored. I can see it on my video performance. Whenever we do economic videos, people are a little less interested in it because economics is kind of boring. Right? I'll be honest. I'm one of the few sort of crazy, weird people that like economics, but most people don't because it's kind of boring. Still, I just thought this is something that we need to talk about. It's something that people need to know about. Our Not only is our economy on a broad national scale doing really badly, but this is a significant issue. And of course, corruption is at the center of it. I saw a lot of you talking. Uh, we know that it's corruption. Now, of course, it needs to be understood that Ratings Africa isn't, as he said, they're not forensic accountants. Their job isn't to look for corruption. Their job isn't to really say why these things are happening. Their job is simply to say, how do you do it right? Right. So it's not like going to a financial manager that's going to tell you, you should stop doing this, you start doing this. This is more like going to your accountant, and your accountant is simply going to tell you, you're broke, stop spending money. Right. That's sort of how it is. Less interested in it, or it makes us too angry. Tarek, how are you doing, sir? Um, I think, yes, it makes people angry, but I think also at the same time, people are just naturally less interested in economics because economics is it's a bit of a fugazi, you know. um Whenever you speak to economists, they will tell you, oh yeah, it's economics, it's basic, but it really isn't, because the problem with economics, and this, I've never actually heard economists admit this, but economics is mostly based on fifis. It's feelings. As strange as that might be, economics is based on feelings. I don't mean the models. I don't mean what an economist does is based on feeling. I mean, a lot of what happens in the world of economics is based on the feeling of the people. So, take, for example, hyperinflation. when your currency just completely breaks down. What is currency? Do you think the money that is in your wallet has value? So if you take a 10 Rand note, those of you that still carry cash, if you take a 10 Rand note, do you think that piece of paper is worth 10 Rand? No, it's not. It's probably not even worth 30 cents. It's just a piece of paper with some ink on it, right? It only has value because I believe that it is worth 10 Rand and you believe that it is worth 10 Rand and you are willing to give me your piece of paper for this thing that I have that I think is worth 10 Rand. And I'm willing to take your piece of paper for this thing that I have that I think is worth 10 Rand. Now, it's a little bit different because if I'm going to sell it for you, if I'm going to sell it to you for 10 Rand, I probably believe that it is worth about 6 Rand. Because I want to make a profit. If you buy that thing for 10 Rand, you probably think that it's worth about 14 Rand because you also want to make a profit. You know, you want to buy something for cheaper than what you actually think it's worth. Otherwise, what's the point of buying it? So there is a little bit of rationality that goes into it. But fundamentally, that piece of paper that you give me is worth nothing. It could be rocks. Like if all of us collectively believe that rocks have value, you could come into my store with 10 rocks and buy a toaster. If I believe that these rocks are worth 10 rocks and someone else is willing to give me stuff for these 10 rocks, then rocks is still value. We don't really look at rocks that way. Rocks are worthless to us. So money is in the mind. That's all. That's where the value exists. It's only in the mind. As a result of that, Dirk Svey, thank you so much for the 5 community subs. Really appreciate you. And welcome to the 5 new citizens of the Republic. Really appreciate you. And that's what makes economics so fascinating, because we look at something like the Great Depression. The Great Depression is one of the most studied economic events of the modern age. We still don't know what caused it. We don't know. We don't know. Just one day people decided to make a run on the banks and sell all of their stocks. There's theories. There's a whole bunch of economic theories. It might have been this thing. It might have been this thing. It could have been this thing. It could have been that thing. The fact is, no one really knows. It just sort of happened. And then it was big trouble. And after the fact, we sort of look at different markers and we say, well, this could have been the start of it. This could have been. And every economist you talk to will have a different reason for why the financial crash of the 1920s happened. None can tell you really why it happened, but they have their theories as to why it happened. Another great example of how economics is just fugazi is the 1999 internet bubble bursting, right? You had the 1999 financial crisis. What happened? Well, pretty much the entire world lost their minds and thought that the internet was going to change everything. With the dawn of the internet, every single business and every single company thought that the internet was the future and it was going to make everyone rich. And companies went and they spent billions of dollars buying up domains, starting all sorts of crazy websites. People literally went and they just registered hundreds of different internet names that they weren't going to use, but their thinking was someone else might start a business and want this name and they'll pay me for this name. Right? So people were just sort of starting business left and right, and everyone was investing because internet was the future. I mean, suddenly in 1999, all of these businesses that have now spent billions of dollars investing in the internet look and go, but where's the money? Like, why are we not making money out of this internet thing? And then all of them just start selling their shares because they think, well, there's no money coming in. Of course, 3 years later, Facebook would start up, Google would start up, and about 5 years after that, the internet truly is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. So they were right. Those investors had it absolutely right. The internet was going to change the world forever. And I think all of us today can attest. You're sitting here watching me because of the internet. But for some reason in 1999, they all decided, nah, this makes no sense. We're not making money here. Let's sell our stuff. And it caused the financial crash, right? It caused the financial crash. No one knows why. Just it happened. We're heading for another one with the AI bubble. That's going to burst. It is going to. The AI, if you look at what's happening in AI, you have companies worth trillions of dollars making no money. No money. They're not really making any money, but they're worth trillions of dollars because everyone's investing. What's going to happen in about a year from now, maybe not even a year, maybe a bit more than a year. It's impossible to predict exactly how long it will take, but at some point, humans are going to go, where's the money? Like, okay, Chat GPT, you're worth trillions, but where's the money? When are we making a return on this investment? And then people are going to sell all of their shares. The market is going to crash. And about 3 or 4 years later, AI is going to change the world. That's just how it works because we're stupid like that. But I tell you these stories because economics is so much about the psychological feeling of a people, more so than just facts. It's very difficult. I remember when I started studying economics. This was after I went to university to study drama. I came back to started my own business, and then I wanted to learn because I was very fascinated in economics, and so I started studying economics through UNISA. And I remember the first textbook for economics that I opened started with what is economics. That's the first chapter. And it says there, economics is not the study of financial systems, exchange rates, currencies, and the rest. Economics is the study of people. Psychology. That's all it is. It's psychology. It's history. It's understanding how human beings are trying to predict how human beings may or may not be thinking and feeling at any given point in time. Bright Starbell, how you doing? And local and international banks trading in currency having an effect on its value. Goose, that's also always going to happen, right? That's always going to be the case. It's always going to be a factor. Although there's been no evidence, as far as I know, following the case. I'm sort of loosely following the case against the local banks for the manipulation of the rand or whatever. And thus far, very little credible evidence exists for local banks really manipulating the local currency. They may have had some effect on it, but from what I can tell, it's just the natural effect of buying and selling a lot of the currency. Greetings, salutation, everyone. Hope the day is gorgeous. Your side, Bright Star. I can't complain. Life's pretty good. Chris, how you doing, sir? Anita, I remember when the rand and the dollar was the same. So I do not remember that. I think I was very, very young or not even born yet when the rand and the dollar was the same. There's nothing wrong. Just want to point out, if you really want to kill South Africa, the rand and the dollar hits the same value. Just FYI. If you want to kill South Africa, the rand and the dollar hits the same value. The thing that, for example, has caused Greece to be in this forever limbo where it can't grow economically, it physically can't fix its own problems, is because Greece is forced to use the euro. And because the euro is so incredibly strong, Greece has no ability to actually export any of its goods for cheap. So when you and I, for example, buy olive oil, we pay premium for that olive oil. Why do we pay premium for that olive oil? Because it's bought in euro. If Greece kept their whatever their currency was called, I can't remember what the Greece currency was called before it became the euro. If they kept that currency, their economic crisis would have destroyed the currency's value. But a low currency is amazing for export. And export is amazing for fixing a broken economy. So the weaker your currency is, the better it is for local producers that want to export, provided you have an economy that is actually producing anything. So the ANC has every advantage given it to actually have a booming economy in South Africa, but they're killing it. Every single decision that the ANC makes is the wrong decision. Petrol price was 89 cents. Again, I think I wasn't even born yet at that time. Like, you guys remember things that I wasn't even an idea at that point, and nobody really wants to buy from SA. And that's actually not quite true. Everyone wants to buy from South Africa. So I'll tell you guys what I've heard personally. So I have friends who are from America, born and raised in America, moved to South Africa. I have friends who's from the UK, born and raised, moved to South Africa, live here. There's a couple of things that all of them say. Our fruit is some of the best in the world. Our meat is the best in the world. Like, every single person that I've ever spoken to all admit the meat here in South Africa just tastes better. It has more flavor. It's a better quality meat. Our fruits is just a better quality. And remember, the fruit that you and I buy in the supermarket isn't even the highest quality fruit, because I have a friend who builds the machines that use AI to sort the fruit. So I know that you and I, the fruit that we buy is one tier higher than the fruit that they use for feed, because it's so bad that it's not for human consumption, right? You and I buy the stuff that's barely for human consumption, and then all of the best fruit that goes out to the rest of the world. They get to buy it. That's why in America you get tomatoes like this, right? Because they get all of our tomatoes that's like this. And you and I get to buy these teeny tiny tomatoes. Like, this is the normal tomato and that's the baby tomato. So effectively, but our fruits, our veggies, our minerals. This might surprise people to know. Coal. South Africa has some of the purest, cleanest, and high-quality coal in the world. Riep van Jambeek, how are you doing? In fact, our coal is so clean that we were able to turn it into biofuel. Most countries in the world, their coal isn't clean enough to do that with. Germany has coal. Their coal is way too dirty to do that with. It would cost more to turn it into fuel than just to not do it in the first place. South Africa has that. Our uranium, some of the highest grade uranium in the world. Gold, some of the most, well, we have had the most, I don't know if we still have the most gold reserves in the world, but we used to have. We still, I think, is the number one exporter of gold in the world. I believe the last time I checked, that's still the case. In terms of minerals, our steel is some of the highest quality steel in the world. Our is it nickel? Is some of the highest nickel quality in the world. Like, South Africa is just the most blessed nation on earth when it comes to geolocation, right? Like, there's nothing holding us back except for the ANC. You also think, so here's the thing: South Africa has the safety from a geolocation perspective of a European nation. I mean, like the same, like, we're like Europe. We have no earthquakes, we have no tsunamis, and what are they called? The monsoons. We have none of that, right? We don't get hit by hurricanes, tornadoes. These things are not things that we ever really have to worry about. So from a geolocation, natural disaster perspective, South Africa is the safest place that you can possibly be, just like in Europe. The difference is we also have this incredible natural resource layer where our surface, our world, is just so full of goodies, that if you had a semi-competent government, this country would explode. I was watching, or was I reading this or watching this? I can't remember. I was either reading a paper on this or watching a thing about this, where it explained not only does South Africa have a crap ton of minerals and resources that is what they call available, right? So this is at a depth that we can actually get to. But if the technology increases and we can go deeper, South Africa effectively has unlimited resources. Because right below the available resources is a crap ton more resources. They're just not currently available because it's too deep. It would cost way too much. In some cases, it's almost impossible because you wouldn't be able to keep the guys cool or get enough oxygen in to keep the guys alive. But we are effectively we are probably one of the most blessed countries on earth. If we just had a government that realized that. If we refine everything to imagine, David, and again, we can do that, right? We can do that. We just need a government that wants to do it. It's almost as if the powers that be, the global players, would benefit from a weak and exploitable South Africa. Ginger Ninja, so you're not wrong. You're actually quite on point with that remark. So if you, I hate doing this because trust me, I am the same, guys. Whenever someone says the global elite, the World Economic Forum, my eyes want to glaze over because it's sort of like when someone wants to blame the Jews for things. My argument is always really, it's the Jews, right? That's such an easy answer to usually problems that are far more complex than just the Jews. So I do hate using that term, right? Not the Jews, but I hate using the globalist label. But in this case, it is important that you understand globalist simply means organizations that have mass global cooperation. So this would be things like the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, which is effectively the same thing at this point, and Bilderberg Group, and there's a number of other groups that have very global aspirations for things that they want to do. And in their view, the world needs to be divided between producers and consumers because the globalist or globalization of the world did not function correctly. You see, the problem was the idea behind globalization was that the rich countries would buy from the poorer countries the stuff that the poorer countries produce for the rich countries. What ended up happening as a result of that, of course, is that now the poorer countries are starting to get rich. And very soon, the poorer countries, well, need to buy stuff from where? Because these poorer countries now got rich. Now they too want to start consuming a bunch of stuff, and they want to move their economies away from working in the factories and the coal mines towards working in air-conditioned offices. So who do they buy from now? So effectively, you run into this problem of eventually you're going to run out of poor countries to produce stuff for you. Because if all the world is rich, none of the world is rich, right? That's sort of the whole game. And so the global elites realized that if this were to happen, there's only one natural outcome. Europe would become the poor countries, and the rest of the world would become the rich countries. And then eventually Europe would be the ones producing all of the stuff for the rest of the countries. And then you would have a flip. So it would just constantly flip. The rich countries are rich until the poor countries become rich, and then the rich countries become poor, and so forth. How do you stop this? If all of us are from Europe, surely we don't want to leave our homelands. We want our homelands to succeed. How do we stop this? Well, we come up with a new globalization project. The project would effectively be the permanent servitude of certain countries. So you identify the countries that has the most resources. Afrika is an immediate competitor to that. And now they become the raw mineral producing nations. They don't build. They don't get to build. They don't get to refine. They don't get to produce. Their job is to mine the minerals. Those minerals are then sent to China and India. These are the two countries that has been identified to be the producer nations. China and India, you take, for example, global warming. The entire world is constantly taught global warming is super bad and we should all go super green, except no one ever says anything about China. No one. Not a single one of these globalists will ever point out how incredibly bad China's pollution is. In fact, China's pollution has reached levels where about 90% of the water in China is not safe for human contact. I I'm not saying human consumption, human contact. This means you can't even use that water to feed the plants that humans eat because the water is so polluted and contaminated. That's China, right? So China and India are going to be the producers. They're going to basically pollute the entire world's pollution. Africa is going to provide all of the mineral resources for China and India to be producing, and Europe will be the ones that provide all of the services for the world. So if you and I here in Africa want to have a message or a message app or a social app, we will use America or Europe's social apps. We would not be allowed to create those because services go to Europe. That's the plan. It is effectively a system that says Africa will forever be the continent that just mines and basically works the fields for Europe to ultimately consume all of the products that come their way. That's the hope. That's the dream. Um, is that going to happen? Well, no, because if you're sitting here in Africa, whether you're white, black, colored, or Indian, you don't want to work in the mines forever, right? It might be an honorable job, but you don't necessarily want to do it forever. This is exactly what Marx wanted. Saying not exactly what Marx wanted. Marx wanted an entire communist system where everyone is equal. But insofar as Marx wanted all the workers united, I guess to an extent, although Marx had his own uh, plans, Marx's economic theory is wildly underthought and underdeveloped. But I wouldn't say Marx is the one that wanted this. I will say though that is Marx is sort of the father of, or let's say he's the formulator of the foundation. And when I say formulator of the foundation, this particular foundation has existed before. So, under the French rationalists, they had a similar foundation, except their foundation was if we kill all the irrational people, only rational people will exist, and therefore we'll be great. You've had similar events that took place throughout history, where the Roman Catholics, for example, would believe that if we kill all the Protestants, life will be absolutely perfect and we convert everyone to Roman Catholicism. Protestant kings had the same idea. So utopian thinking has always been sort of a human error where we think that if only we can, then life will be amazing. If only we can get rid of this group, if only we can do this, if only you'll see people, specifically on the left, they'll say, if only we can get rid of all these transphobes or the homophobes or the people who are against abortion or conservatives. If we can get rid of these people, life will be perfect. All right, then we can build our utopia. So it is true that utopian views have existed as long as man has been around. Uh, Karl Marx really laid the modern foundation of the utopian empire, but I wouldn't say uh, the work of the global project. That's more building upon the work of Marx, and ultimately, Marx's works have also been completely shifted. So, for example, the modern left has completely given up on the worker. The modern left no longer cares at all. They don't even pretend to care about worker rights or about workers in any way, shape, or form, because the modern left realized, and it needs to be understood. So Karl Marx predicted that the workers of the world will unite and they will overthrow their capitalist masters. That didn't happen. The Soviet Union was actually quite surprised. Lenin, Stalin, they were actually quite surprised. They did not understand why is it that the workers of Germany aren't rising up and overthrowing their capitalist masters, especially considering how we've already done that, right? So they don't have to worry about being the first to do it. We've done it. We've laid the groundwork, and as soon as they do it, we'll just get them and make them part of the Soviet Union. So this was the idea, and that never materialized. And so in the 1960s, the communists are having to deal with the uncomfortable reality that people are now finding out about what happens in the Soviet Union and the incredible evil of Joseph Stalin, and just the evils of the Soviet Union in general. And obviously, this becomes a problem because how do you sell a system to people that has killed, at that point, I think it was something like 41 million people that have already been killed by the Soviet Union, their own people, by the way, through starvation and gulags and just the ritual killings. I say ritual, political killings, but it became sort of a ritual in the Russian Empire. Um, you can't sell that, right? And so communism sort of undergoes a bit of a rebranding, and it becomes the oppressed of the world will stand together. Right, they realize workers is a bit too loosely defined, and workers, there's too many categories that workers could belong to, so that's not going to work. But oppressive people who are oppressed, they will all unite under a single banner. And so that's sort of building on Karl Marx's theories. Karl Marx himself didn't necessarily say this, but they built on it and they created a new element of it. This is where you get intersectional sort of struggle sessions, where you have all of these intersectionalities and everyone intersects, and on that intersection is determined your level of oppression in the oppression Olympics. And then, of course, the globalists aren't quite like that, right? So when you look at Klaus Schwab, he probably doesn't buy in to half of this nonsense, but the leftists are super helpful to get rid of the people that would oppose the globalist or the globalization project. And so they're happy to sort of use these oppressed groups to get rid of the capitalists, to get rid of the people that care about freedom, and then they'll move in and they'll put together their globalist utopia slash dystopia. Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? A man should be entitled to that, and a woman should be entitled to the pain of her labor. But these days, that's not really the case anymore. Rolf Meyer het al in 83 geweet, ons gaan onttrek uit Angola, maar toch het hy ons gestuur, die vark. Rolf Meyer, ek sê niks. I personally believe that Rolf Meyer is an absolute moron. I'll show you guys. There's a post that he made that's actually quite ridiculous. Here we go. And I genuinely get so annoyed. So annoyed when I see this stuff. Here you have Rolf Meyer. And Rolf Meyer explains, I think there is a little bit of a misconception about when apartheid started. It started in 1652. Dude, the date of apartheid just continuously moves, man. Like, I don't even know anymore. You know, like it's just it's that goalpost is on a conveyor belt. They brought with them the paradigm in terms of superiority and inferiority. They always thought they were superior to the people who are indigenous to Africa. It was a paradigm of more than 300 years. Now, of course, Rolf Meyer has no clue. Rolf Meyer has no idea what he's talking about, because even historically, that makes no sense whatsoever. So it needs to be understood that the Afrikaner never arrived here with the idea that they are better than anyone. The first towns, Rob Dagan responded to this, and he actually made the claim. The first towns that allowed for burgerskap did not ask for skin color. They didn't care about skin color. They asked about baptism status. If you were baptized in a Christian, you could become a burgher, right? A citizen of their town. Most of the Afrikaners cared very little for race. And this is evidenced by the fact that there is cooperation between the Khoisan and the early immigrants and the early settlers in South Africa, dating back to pretty much a year of their arrival. Was there conflict between these groups? Absolutely, right? But this is history. There's always going to be conflict. right? The difference is in almost all of these conflicts, the conflict starts, we fight a little, then we make peace, and then we continue, right? We basically teach each other some lessons. We made a deal. You didn't stick to the rules of the deal. Now I punish you. You apologize, and we continue. And that's life. That's just how it goes. The idea that the white man arrived here with this inherent idea of inferiority versus superiority just ignores the facts of, first and foremost, what the Afrikaner was like in the first place, but then also what apartheid was. The idea behind apartheid wasn't to be inferior or superior to anyone. Apartheid was, at its core, a system of separateness. That's it. At no point did the white man say we're better than the black man. Not officially, at least. Were there some white people that thought they were better than the black people? Absolutely. But the same could be argued. You have some black people who think they're better than white people, like Julius Malema. I wouldn't say this to Julius Malema because it might hurt his fifis, but Julius Malema isn't even better than most black people, right? In fact, there are beggars on the street that have more integrity and intelligence than Julius Malema. So Julius is the last person to could ever claim who could ever claim that he is better than anyone. But you do have your black superiority or supremacists. You have your white supremacists. That's always going to happen. Humanity is a flawed thing, right? And so you are going to have that. The vast majority of white people do not think that they are superior to black people. The vast majority of white people do think that they're superior to the ANC. But I would also argue that the vast majority of black people think that they're superior to the ANC. I don't think there's many people in this country that think the ANC is the best we have to offer. And I think a lot of times people misconstrue the hatred that white people have for this government into thinking that white people just hate black people. This couldn't be further from the truth. 50 is the new 40. How you doing, sir? So good to be here. Enjoy the great Cape Town weather. Yeah, well, here where I am, the wind is blowing like crazy, but yeah, at least it's not raining, I guess. Although I do miss the rain. I want a little bit more rain. This is a very dry Cape Town winter, which annoys me. But nevertheless, um, most white people are not. Most white people don't believe that they're better. Most white people just want to be left alone. And by that, I don't mean that they don't want to share a country with black people or that they don't want to have neighbors who are black. Most white people just want the government to leave them the hell alone so that we can get on with the business of living, so that we can be quiet, right? And live quiet and peaceful lives. That's the whole point. It's actually one of the things that, if you know the history of the Afrikaner people, you will know that the Afrikaner people leaves and relocates almost every single time before it goes to war. Throughout its entire history, when the Zulu attacks, the Afrikaner moves away until they can no longer move away, until they realize, well, it's now or never. If we continue to run, we'll just run into the next problem. Then they make their stand, then they fight. When the English pursue them, what do? They just move. When the English wants to attack them, when they discover gold and the English wants the gold, what does the Afrikaner do? They negotiate. The English, of course, didn't want to negotiate. They wanted all of the gold. So when Cecil John Rhodes met with Paul Kruger to discuss terms, he had no interest in actually being or making terms. He just wanted to see if Paul Kruger would actually surrender. And when Paul Kruger said, we will not surrender, we will not give you voting rights, but we are willing to do a whole bunch of other things for you, Paul Kruger even knew, right, this is war. The English are going to come for us. But the Afrikaner people are not really a people of war. There are people that want, and I love this about my people, if I'm honest with all of you. The Bible says that we must live peaceful and quiet lives. You read Paul's letters to Philemon. I believe he, in his letter to Timothy, he says the same. In the letters to Hebrews, the author makes the same. Colossians or Corinthians, I think, says the same thing. And it is ultimately that as Christians, we should live peaceful and quiet lives. We should not bother other people, because if you bother other people, they're going to bother you, and that creates a non-peaceful life. So the Afrikaner has always been a people that just want to live a peaceful life. They don't want to consistently fight. They don't want to consistently, but we will fight. If you push us far enough, if you don't give us a way out, we will absolutely fight. We don't fight because we're afraid. We don't fight because we don't want to fight. And I think that's oftentimes the thing that's completely lost. But apartheid has been so mangled, dude. Like, I don't think there's a single young person in South Africa that actually knows what apartheid is. And to be left to work and make a living without discrimination, true. God also said man must protect and provide for his family. Chris, of course, but that isn't to be done with violence unless there is no other option, right? Like, as Christians, we don't just pick up the gun and shoot and then ask questions later. We always try to find a peaceful solution before we even begin to pick up the gun. We want peace and to be left. It's time we become a people of war. Chris, that will never happen. It's not in the psyche of the Afrikaner. The Afrikaner isn't a people of war. They're never going to be a people of war. And I don't think that is something that I even want. Why would you want to make war if you can actually just have a peaceful resolution? If it's at all possible. War should always be the last resort. Always. And even when you go to war, you should always open the door for peace. Always. In Angola, we shot first and asked no questions. Yeah, but you didn't just go to Angola without any warning. By the time you arrived in Angola, the war was already going. It was already being waged. You were a soldier. You had your orders. You were doing what you were told, which is what a soldier is supposed to do. But the war in Angola didn't just start. The Afrikaner didn't just wake up and go, hey, I want Angola, right? There were a lot of things that happened prior to that war starting. And there were a lot of attempts to not have that war start in the first place. There were even a lot of attempts to stop the war while it was going on. Because again, the Afrikaner isn't really a people of war. We're not interested in conquest. We've never been a conquering people. And that's sort of indicative of the fact, or I think we owe that to the fact that we were not, our forefathers weren't aristocrats. It wasn't the rich Europeans that came to South Africa. It was the peasants. Right? Peasants never want to conquer. Peasants just want to live. Going to have a few shortages. Marius, not just a few. How do you negotiate with the devil? You don't. But you're hopefully not negotiating with the devil. You're negotiating with people. Right? And until such time that it becomes, Chris, I think what you're mistaking here is I'm not suggesting, oh, we make some deal with the communists. I'm not interested in making deals with the communists. I will, however, put it to the communists to stop being communists. That's my final offer. I'm more than happy to share the country with any human being, as long as they're human, provided they're not a communist. That's my final offer. And we can, you know, you can change your ways, or we will eventually go to war. Um, but I'm not just gonna start the war. How do you know all options have been taken? David, you never know if all options have been taken, right? But what you can know is the situation is now beyond dire, right? So the way it worked, at least in terms of, so there's multiple different Christian theologies or theological instances around this, right? It's known broadly as the just war theory. So, in other words, war must always be just. Um, but then within that, there's different variations dependent on what we're talking about, right? So, if as a people you are under oppression by a government, do you as a Christian have the right to revolt against your government? Yes, but. And the but is kind of important. You do have the right to revolt against your government, but you must exhaust every possible avenue through peaceful negotiations first. So you have to be able to show we've tried everything to circumvent this revolution, and they would not budge. They would not become fair. Knight of Justice, how are you doing? And as a result of this, we have no other option but to go to war, right? But to start a revolution. Even in starting the revolution prior to this, if there is a way for you to escape, so you don't, Jesus tells his disciples, if you go into a town and they reject you, leave. Don't fight. Don't kill the people in that town. If they reject you, leave. Just go to another town. Uh, Paul writes about, well, not Paul, in Acts, they speak about how Paul, still known as Saul at this point, Saul in Aramaic, Paul in Greek, but Saul at this point, because he's in Jerusalem, he's persecuting the church, right? And he is killing Christians by the hundreds. What do the Christians do? They don't kill Paul. They just leave, right? They leave. They go from town to town to town. They run away from Paul as he is persecuting them. So first, we try to negotiate. If we see that there is no negotiations to be had, we see if we can leave. Is there a way for us to leave? Now, a lot of people are taking up President Trump's offer for refugee status in America. Does that mean that because we can go as refugees, we're not allowed to fight for our country here? Absolutely not. For most people, the option to leave and go to America isn't an option that they can entertain, right? They're either too old or they have an entire family. Relocating their family to a different country would be almost impossible. A lot of people, I know this sounds strange, but a lot of people can't even really speak English, especially a lot of Afrikaner people in the north. Trust me, I have family members who live in the north who barely, I mean, when I say barely speak English, I'm genuinely not exaggerating. English is not a language that they have any proficiency in. You move that person to America, they're done, right? They won't be able to get a job because they can't really speak English. They won't ever feel at home because they don't. That's just not their home, right? So if you can't leave and the evil continues, then and only then are you justified in moving towards violence. But it can only happen if there's a genuine belief that your very lives are now in danger, right? So this government or this group is coming for your lives. They're going to end your life. Now you're allowed to stand up and say no more. Don't fear, because I am here. Never forget, South Africa is a PvP server. Use it to your advantage. The better you are, the less consequences you have. Play the game, then them's the rules. Sir Lagalot, how you doing, sir? It's only a walk rhyme the first time. Don't get caught. Wow. Curious, what has not been tried? Turks Vey, for now, we fight the fight in the way that we do, right? If you look, for example, at the enclave nature of South Africa, that is currently the state that we are in. We're sort of state proofing ourselves, building our own institutions. And as the talk that we had today with Leon showed, this is going to happen more and more. Our municipalities are starting to fall apart, which means you're going to have to take care of yourself, right? There's no other option. Um, if that doesn't work, so if after all of that, the communists continue to come, then we can have a different kind of discussion. But for now, I think the communists are going to destroy themselves. I don't think we have to lift a finger. I think we can rest easy knowing that they'll destroy themselves. In SA, which is the last bastion, there is nowhere to go. So it is either fight or get killed or destroyed. Uh, I know of people who say they won't leave. They are waiting for what Senior said. That's right. I'm not even necessarily waiting for what Senior said. I just won't leave because this is my country. I was born here, right? My people are here. My church is here. I'm happy with where I am. You know, I don't want to go anywhere. Um, I have tremendous friends here, tremendous community. I don't necessarily know if I will ever be able to find the same in a different country. And so I don't want to go. I'm not talking about the enclaves of France Grenier, Christine. I just because France Grenier is the one who said it first doesn't mean you can't use your eyes and say, oh, wait, people are actually doing their own thing. Right? France Grenier just gave it a name. But it's not a phenomena that is happening only because France Grenier said it. You can already see it happening. I have family members who live on farming communities where the entire farming community is doing their own thing. The government supplies nothing, they do their own thing. I have people in my friend group who are doing their own thing. They're not doing anything with the government. The government has nothing to do with anything that they do. They have their own boreholes. They have their own electricity generation. They're basically completely off the grid. So it is already happening. Franz Grenier simply includes what is already happening in his own analysis of South Africa, and it's not a wrong analysis. There's nothing wrong with that analysis. Does his analysis have some flaws? Absolutely. I'm not convinced that the enclaves of South Africa is going to be all that great, because I'm yet to see what happens when you have these enclaves of order in a land of disorder. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, you play the hand that you were dealt. Doesn't even have a police force. The gangsters control the police. True, Knight. So true. If someone is struggling with this, then there's a good example. South Africa has a limit on how much ammo you can keep, but no one monitors the amount you take from 6 different shops. Doing our own thing is the way to go. If they don't kill us physically, they will tax us to death. Fact. Yeah, I'm sure they will. I have no doubt that that is what the ANC wants to do. In my opinion, the ANC is at its core an anti white and, secondly, an anti conservative organization. They hate the white people and they despise conservatives in almost equal measure. I have no doubt about that. What am I supposed to do? I know that. But that doesn't mean I'm just going to stop. Doesn't mean I'm going to flee. I'm going to build a home and a house and a life for myself. And if the day arrives where I absolutely have to leave, then I'll leave. right? If it comes down to it that I have to get into a little rubber ducky and trick my way across the ocean to America, then so be it, right? Then I'll do that. But until such time, I like being here. This is my country. These are my people. I like 90% of the people I meet every single day. I like them. I enjoy going to the shop, especially enjoy the coloreds here in Cape Town. They're funny as hell, right? So I have no issues living here. Uh, there's issues in the country making my life hard, but I choose to face those challenges. I don't want to run away from them. And by the way, this is not me judging people leaving. I want to be very clear. I'm not saying you're running away from your problems. I recognize that I am in a very fortunate position. I'm blessed that I have a job that pays me well in a country where jobs are incredibly difficult to get if you're a white person. So I understand this. I promise you, I understand that. I'm not sitting here from my high horse saying, oh, you guys are just running away from your problems. Not at all. Um, I am blessed to be able to do what I do. Um, YouTube doesn't pay millions, but it pays enough to pay the bills. Let's say that. Um, and I also understand that I'm in a fortuitous position because I don't have children, right? I don't have a wife, so there are things that I don't have to take into account that many of you must take into account. If you have kids, if you have a wife, as a husband, you're obviously looking at your wife and your kids and you're thinking, how can I keep them safe? That's going to change the equation for you. And if that equation comes out to, I have to leave, I have to go to America, absolutely, bro. Do what is best for your family. That's your job, to take care of your family, right? I don't have those things, so I don't have to take care of that. And maybe that changes. Maybe in a year or two, I meet a woman and I get married and she becomes pregnant. Now I think, wait, I don't understand. I don't want to raise my children here. I want my son or my daughter to have safety and to feel like they belong to a country. And then maybe all of that changes and, suddenly I start making videos from America. That could happen. I'm not saying I will never leave South Africa. I'm just saying for now, the calculations that I have done leads me to I'm staying. I'm staying. I want to be able to every once in a while speak Afrikaans to a shopkeeper. You know, I did bleed for my country, lost friends, so I paid my due. Christine, Chris, I'm not judging anyone. I mean, I'm not judging you for wanting to leave or for wanting to stay or whatever you want to do. Every human being must do what they believe is best for them. Every human being. A Buddha Macy, Knight of Justice. I have no what do you say? I have no preconditions on the woman that I marry. It's the one thing that I'm not really worried, like whether she speaks Afrikaans, English, or like those things don't really bother me all that much. I'm fortunate, I guess, in that regard. I do know some guys who will only. In fact, I'll tell you guys a funny story. I won't name names here because they do watch my content every once in a while. But I know a guy who his entire life he said he wants to marry an Afrikaans woman. That's it. No English, no cross interracial, intercultural. He wants to marry an Afrikaans Boere Macy. That's the goal. And then he meets a Scottish girl. Which is like the furthest thing you can get from an Afrikaans Boere Macy. But he falls in love with her. And what are you going to do, right? That happens. Which every single time I think about it, it just makes me laugh a little. I can't even marry again. I'm a damn eunuch. Chris, I'm sorry about that. I married a thoroughbred German woman. Yeah, some people just, life works out differently. My dad was English, and my mom is raw Afrikaans. I mean, at church, I have friends who the wife is Afrikaans, the husband is also like raw English. He understands a little bit of Afrikaans, but for the most part, that's actually something that's very, very awkward that I meet in Cape Town quite often. There's a lot of English people in Cape Town that for some reason don't speak a lick of Afrikaans. In Polokwane and in Pretoria, I don't think an English person exists that doesn't speak Afrikaans. I don't think that exists. Like, if you're English, you must at least be able to speak Afrikaans or at least understand it. Here in Cape Town, it seems like, nah, dad was a boer. Mom was Irish. Nice. Oh, yes, a blonde, blue-eyed Afrikaans farm girl. Don't joke. They are the best. They are fun, and their brothers taught them how to play in the mud. Yeah, so like, I don't think I would like a girl that plays in the mud. Because I don't play in the mud. So why would I like, dude? This is the one thing that I genuinely I don't want to marry a girl that likes the outdoors too much. Like, don't take me on hikes and to camping trips and crap. Like, you want me to be desperately unhappy. You invite me to a camping trip, dude. I don't want to camp. My ancestors spent centuries to ensure that they didn't have to camp. And now you want to take me back into the bush to live like a caveman? No thanks. I will stay in a hotel. I will live in a flat. I'll have all the amenities and the luxuries that modern life affords. I don't want to live in the bush like my ancestors did. Jock, how you doing, sir? Would not say that looking at you, Stefan. Jock would not say what. Mr. Chat with Leon. Joe Texas, how you doing, sir? I love it. I have both the best of both worlds. All my tunnies are Afrikaans and nice. Motocross goals rock and they play in the mud, but everyone to their own. Yeah, I also know motocross, so but different people find different interests. Glamping, I wouldn't even go glamping. Night of Justice, I wouldn't even go glamping. Like, for me, it's just like, if you have some wild fantasy to live out caveman realities, go for it. I have no interest in that. I like the luxuries of modern life. I want to have electricity. I want to be able to charge my phone. I want to be able to get on the computer and watch a series, play a video game, watch a YouTube video. I don't want to go live in the middle of nowhere. I have no interest in the bush whatsoever. Yeah, for me, and I'm scared of just about everything that is on a farm. Like, I genuinely have a phobia of just about everything that is on a farm. Moths, I'm actually afraid of moths. I don't know why, but in my head, that there's going to be one moth that's going to just bite my head off. I actually, moths is more. It's not really afraid. I find them grillerig in Afrikaans. What's the English for grillerig? I find moths. Well, I don't know why, but I don't like them. Bugs eat me alive. Ek het 2 jaar in die army gekom. It's funny when Afrikaans always want to speak English to an Englishman, always. David, well, I do that. My brothers judge me quite a lot. Squeamish. Yeah, I don't know if squeamish is exactly the right word, but kind of, right? I find those little wormy bodies of theirs just freaks me out, man. Yeah, I also don't like shongololus, but they're okay-ish. Grew up on a farm, got bitten by a wrinkle, survived without any issues. Yeah, no. Creepy crawlies, they give you goosebumps. Yeah, they just freak me out. What did I want to say now? Love the bush, but will not camp. So you want to be able to outrun a camel spider? No, I wouldn't want to try. There was something I wanted to say. Someone mentioned something, and now I can't remember. Oh, David, yeah. You're in Cape Town. My brothers make a lot of fun of me because I will do that. Right. So whenever I meet someone, my go-to language is English. But that's not it's not pretense. I think because for so many years I lived my life in English, right? So it's been more than a decade that I've spent 16 plus hours a day of my life speaking English. So I think in English. I pray in English. My Bible is English. My church is English. When I speak to you guys, it's in English. So I dream in both English and in Afrikaans. Right? So my dreams are bilingual. I've genuinely woken up where I go, wow, that I spoke English in that one. So for me, English is sort of just part of it. So whenever I meet someone new, it's just automatic. Hey, how you doing? But it's just automatic. Whereas my brothers here in Cape Town, it's a safe bet that if you say, hey, hoe gaan het, people will understand. Right? That's a safe bet. They will probably. So whenever I meet someone, I go, hey, how you doing? Lekker donkey. And they'll be the ones who start speaking Afrikaans, and then I'll switch to Afrikaans. And what's it all, denk jy? Both, David, both. So I'll swap. Like it's genuinely, it's a natural switch between the two. So if I'm sitting here thinking about a topic or thinking about a video, I'll go English into Afrikaans, into English, into Afrikaans, into English, into Afrikaans. So it goes literally both ways. Some things I find easier to think through in Afrikaans. Other things I find easier to think through in English. When I pray, I also go English, Afrikaans, English. It's sort of like a back and forth between English and Afrikaans. Yeah, so I do almost everything bilingually. Everything. It's just both languages are represented, which is interesting because my family is full blown Afrikaans. My dad is Afrikaans, my mom is Afrikaans. They both speak Afrikaans. I was brought up in a house Afrikaans. So it's quite interesting that for me it just became this sort of both sides of the road. Gab, how you doing? My church is Afrikaans. My business and technical language is English or German. My toolmakers in Slaapstad are German. For me, it's the same. Afrikaans and English are the same in my head. Not afraid of anything, but no camping. I will drive to the bush and stay in luxury. I won't even necessarily. I don't even like staying in the bush, even if it's in luxury. I find being angry in Afrikaans is better than English, easier to blow steam. I will say, back in the day when I still cussed a lot, right? That was one of the first things that the Lord took away from me was cussing, because I used to cuss a lot, right? Like basically the P and the C word was, or the K word in Afrikaans, that was just words that I just used. They would just I would use them in between words. You know, just like just throw them in just for crap and giggles. So I swore a lot. And back then, I did find that Afrikaans expresses it better. Afrikaans is a lot harsher, you know. It's like it's a very to the point language. Like if you want to tell someone that they're a moron, Afrikaans just does it better. English sounds a little bit like you're kind of upset, but this is more like an email language. Afrikaans is let's go outside and let me explain to you how this is supposed to work. French and Mandarin are very difficult. Yeah, I would not even try. At Atlas, I had to learn French. Everything was French. Screw French. Screw. Well, basically, I don't want to learn any more languages. I'm happy with Afrikaans and English. I'm good. I don't need more. Afrikaans is kras. It is, but it's also a very direct language and a very beautiful language when you actually get into it. Like, I'll say this, even though my church is English, I worship in English, I read my Bible in English, there's something about Afrikaans Christian music, right? Like Afrikaans gospel music just hits different. It's just, you can take the exact same song in Afrikaans and in English, and the Afrikaans song just sounds more powerful. At least to me, it sounds like a much more powerful song. I asked a deaf guy once in what language he thinks. He thinks in English. Text, interesting. That is interesting. Afrikaans is lekker, love it. Yeah, I like Afrikaans, and I'm very proud of my people. Like, do not for a second think because I speak with a completely screwed up accent, um, and the fact that I think in English and in Afrikaans, that I don't love being Afrikaans. I do. I absolutely love the fact that I'm Afrikaans. I love my heritage. I love my history. I love my people. You know, I love my culture. My church released an album, Book 4. Nice. I have a link in the description. I'll check that out, Chris. I have a link in the description. It should still be in the description to Afrikaans Christian music by the Stellenbosch Bible Church. If you guys are in Stellenbosch and you're looking for a church, it's a very good church, the Stellenbosch Bible Church, because it has Baptist theology effectively, but they're not part of the Baptist Association, and so they decided to call themselves the Stellenbosch Bible Church, although the preaching is absolutely top notch. I know the pastor, Lungeren. He's a really good pastor. All right, ladies and gentlemen, is there anything else before I leave you guys for the weekend? Is there anything else that you would like to discuss? Anything else that you would like to bring up? Because we've been here for 2 hours. I genuinely thank all of you for coming out, for hanging out, for spending time with me. It's been absolutely phenomenal to have you here. Turks Fay, once again, for the 5 community subs. I truly appreciate you for that. You're absolutely top notch, man. Thank you so much for the financial support. Look for Ligpunt Book 4. All right, I'm gonna do that now. Actually, like as soon as I end the stream, I'm gonna go look for that, Chris. Thank you. South Africa petrol shortage. Is there currently a petrol shortage, Marius? I'm petrified that Afrikaans language eventually disappears. Not of justice, I'm not. Because if you look, actually, if you look globally, the Afrikaans language is the fastest growing language in the world. More and more people are starting to speak it. The language itself is staying alive. I'm not worried. We'll make it work. When are we doing a call on Discord? Oh, Stefan. Time, man. I promise you, there's so many people that want to talk to me, and I don't get time. Especially now with trying to get a bit more into interviews, I'm finding it very difficult to keep track of everything because I have to speak to people to set up the interview, then I have to keep track of the date, and then I have to keep all the videos. I promise I will figure it out. But yeah, please be patient with me. There's so many people that are waiting for DMs from me as well. I feel bad about it. Like, so many people are waiting for DMs, and I'm just like, dude, I don't have the time for this. I don't have time to respond right now because, yeah. So bear with me. I will figure this out. I'm just one guy trying to make this work. I'm glad that you guys enjoy the interviews. I enjoy them as well, although I do still want to speak to more people, you know. My husband says I'm rebellious today. I filled up our bird feeder yesterday. Nice. I like it, Sonia. I like it, especially if you live in Cape Town. Then I absolutely approve. Then I absolutely approve. For those of you that don't get at least if I'm correct, for those of you that don't get the joke, you clearly don't know what's happening in Cape Town, what the DA is doing in Cape Town. sound like you need volunteers to help. Stefan, I would definitely not want volunteers to help. Volunteers, because they're not getting paid for it, you also don't have the ability to hold them responsible for what they do. So one of the things that I am working towards, and this is what the YouTube memberships are going for, is to get an editor and to get researchers in place, because that would already make my life a million times easier. Just to have people that can give me the information that I need. Right? Like, I don't mind reading the information myself. I love doing that. But it's the finding the information. So if I want to make a video about a specific topic, just finding the information can take days. And if I could have a researcher that finds the information and then gives it to me, I could be like, hey, here we go. Now I can just sit and read this information and learn, right? Because that would already save a lot of time. But we're years away from that. For now, I think it's just me. And hey, I welcome the challenge because I'm learning and I'm hopefully getting better. Hopefully you guys enjoy the content more, and hopefully the content is growing and getting better, and you find it entertaining and of value. And as long as I provide value, I'm happy to keep doing what I'm doing. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to go because it's almost a weekend and I still have to do a video for Truth Report. And there's still some research that I have to do for that video. So I really appreciate all of you for coming out, for hanging out, for spending your afternoon with me. I hope you had a ton of fun. If I don't see you again, please enjoy your weekend. Just go nuts. And I'll see all of you in the next one. Peace.